Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why, and how of newspaper analysis. Today we will be taking up important news and article from the Hindu newspaper Delhi edition dated 22nd November 2022. Topics that we are going to discuss today are displayed on your screen. Let's begin the discussion. Our first discussion of today's session is based on this news which featured on page number 13 of the Hindu newspaper. This news is about occurrence of a 5.6 magnitude earthquake in the Java island of Indonesia. Now recently earthquake was also in news due to occurrence of 3 back-to-back mild intensities earthquake in the neighboring country of Nepal. As we know, geophysical phenomena are important part of UPSC syllabus. The topic of physical geography has been mentioned in prelims examination syllabus, as well as you can see the main syllabus of GS paper 1. You will find that salient features of world's physical geography along with important geophysical phenomena such as earthquake, tsunami, volcanic activity, cyclone, etc. have also been mentioned. So today we will be taking up a discussion based on plate tectonic theory and earthquake. In this discussion we will see the evolution of plate tectonic theory, various kinds of boundaries, and how these boundaries are reason for occurrence of earthquake. While discussing earthquake, we will also look into the types of earthquake, their effect and NDMA guidelines with respect to earthquakes. Now, in order to understand the phenomena of earthquake, we must look into the theory of plate tectonic. And to understand the plate tectonic theory, we must look into its evolution. So, the first theory which initiated the idea of movement of continents and ocean floors is the continental drift theory. It was propounded by a German meteorologist Alfred Wegener in the year 1912. Now interestingly, Alfred Wegener was a meteorologist who in his quest of finding answers to climate change noted some observation. And for those observations to be correct, he had two options. First was the climatic zones were changing their location, and second was the land mass was changing their location. So he opted for his second option, that there is a movement in the landmass. So he provided a comprehensive argument in the form of the continental drift theory in the year 1912. This was regarding the distribution of ocean and the continents. According to him, all the continents formed a single continental mass and a mega ocean surrounding the same. He named the supercontinent as Pangaea and he named the mega ocean mass as Panthalassa. He argued that at around 150 million years ago, the supercontinent Pangaea began to split. Pangaea first broke into two large continental masses as Laurasia and Gondwana. Subsequently, these two land masses continued to break into various smaller continents that exist even today. He provided several evidences in support of his theory. Like he highlighted the geographical similarity between the African continent and South American continent and said that they can be fitted together in the same way as two cut-off pieces of wood can be fitted, which we know as a jigsaw fit theory. Then he talked about the placer deposits which are found in Ghana without having the source rock of these deposits. He also highlighted the occurrence of tellite deposit in 14 different land masses, and also talked about the founding of similar fossils in geographically separate landmasses. However, this theory was rejected on various grounds. According to Wegener, the force behind the movement of these continental masses was the tidal force and the polar fleeing force. According to the scientists, the tidal force is not adequate enough to start such a massive movement. Secondly, in first part of his theory, he talked about the frictionless movement of Sial over Sima. However, while explaining the formation of mountain, he talked about the friction between Sial and Sima. It was a contradictory argument. Apart from this, his jigsaw fit theory was only applicable to few land masses and it does not hold ground for other land masses. Though the theory was rejected, but it initiated the discussion about the movement of the land masses and ocean basin. So the next improvement that came upon this theory was the sea floor spreading theory. Now the major drawback of Wegener's theory was the lack of adequate force. Now this was improved by the convection current theory of Arthur Holmes, which was propounded in 1930s. And on the basis of this convection current theory, Harry Hess in 1961 propounded the theory of sea floor spreading. The theory of Harry Hess was based upon two basic findings. First was the paleomagnetism and second was mapping of the ocean floor. Now paleomagnetism is a study of magnetic characteristic of rocks that has been acquired at a certain moment of time. And mapping of ocean floor revealed some new facts to the scientific communities. While mapping of ocean floor, it was realized that all along the mid-oceanic ridges, volcanic eruptions are common and they bring huge amount of lava to the surface in those areas. Second finding was the rock equidistance on either side of the crest of mid-oceanic ridge show remarkable similarities. Third was the ocean crust rocks are much younger than the continental rocks. Fourth was the sediment on the ocean floor were unexpectedly thin. And fifth was the deep trenches have deep-seated earthquake occurrence, while in the mid-oceanic ridge areas the quake foci had a shallow depth. Now these findings along with the paleomagnetism, when combined with the convection current theory of Arthur Holmes, the sea floor spreading theory of Harry Hess came into picture. Hess argued that constant eruption at the crest of oceanic ridges caused the rupture of the oceanic crust and the new lava wedges into it, pushing the oceanic crust on the either side. The ocean floor thus spreads. Now the younger age of the oceanic crust and fact that is spreading of one ocean does not cause the shrinking of another ocean made Harry Hess think about the consumption of the oceanic crust. He further maintained that the ocean floor that gets pushed due to volcanic eruption at the crest sinks down at the oceanic trenches and get consumed. Now this theory of sea floor spreading removed several anomalies associated with the continental drift theory of the Wegener. However, this theory was limited to the movement of ocean crust. So in order to remove that deficiency, in 1967 the theory of plate tectonic came into existence. Now in the year 1967, Mackenzie and Parker suggested the theory of plate tectonic. Morgan later outlined the theory in the year 1968. Now in order to understand the plate tectonic, first let us look into what is plate. A tectonic plate is a massive, irregularly shaped slab of solid rock, generally composed of both continental and oceanic lithosphere. Now these plates move horizontally over the asthenosphere as a rigid units. The lithosphere includes the crust and top mantle with its thickness range varying between 5 to 100 km in oceanic part and about 200 km in continental part. A plate may be referred to as continental plate or oceanic plate depending on which of the two occupy a large portion of the plate. Now this whole mechanism of evolution, nature and motion of plates and reaction that has resulted from this motion is called plate tectonic. The theory of plate tectonic proposes that the Earth's lithosphere is divided into 7 major plates and around 20 minor plates. Now here in this figure you can identify some major plates like North America, Eurasian, Pacific, Indo-Austral, African, South American and Antarctic plate, while there are some minor plates like Juan de Fuca, Cocos, Caribbean, Nazca, Scotia, Arabian plate and Philippine plate. Now there are 3 kinds of plate boundaries. First is divergent boundary. Here new crust is generated as the plates pull away from each other. As you can see here, The sides where the plates move away from each other are called spreading sides. The best known example of divergent boundaries is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. At this, the American plate is separated from the Eurasian and African plate. Now, second kind of boundary is the convergent boundary. It is a boundary where the crust is destroyed as one plate dives into another plate. The location where sinking of plate occurs is called subduction zone. There are three ways in which convergence can occur. One is between oceanic and continental plate. Second is between two oceanic plate. And third is between two continental plates. Now, third type of boundary is the transformed boundary, where the crust is neither produced nor destroyed as the plates slide horizontally past each other. Transform faults are the planes of separation generally perpendicular to the mid-oceanic ridge. Now, the interaction around these boundaries creates a kind of disequilibrium in the earth crust. Now, this disequilibrium causes release of energy, and which is the root cause of the earthquake. Now, the major significance of plate tectonic theory lies in the fact that it has provided suitable explanation for various geophysical phenomena. And the basis of this plate tectonic theory is both the seafloor spreading and the continental drift theory. So basically, the seafloor spreading theory and the continental drift theory are complementary to the plate tectonic theory. Now, as we have seen that plate tectonic theory has provided explanation to various geophysical phenomena. So is true with the case of earthquake. Let us see how. But first, we must look at the question, what is an earthquake? An earthquake, in simple word, is shaking of earth. It is a natural event and it is caused due to release of energy due to disequilibrium in any part of earth crust, which generates waves that travel in all directions. Now, while discussing the various plate boundaries and movement around them, we know the origins of disequilibrium in the earth crust. Now, before going into the earthquake, let us understand what is a fault. Fault is nothing but a sharp break in the crustal rock. Rocks along a fault tend to move in opposite directions. As the overlying rock strata press them, the friction locks them together. However, their tendency to move apart at some point of time overcomes this friction. And as a result, the block gets deformed and eventually they slide past one another abrupt. This abrupt motion causes a release of energy and the energy waves travel in all directions. Now here you can see the term focus. Focus is nothing but place of origin of earthquake which lies inside the earth, and a point which lies perpendicular to the focus and on the earth's surface is called epicenter. The seismic waves are recorded for the first time at the epicenter. Now we talked about release of energy and energy waves. So there are two types of earthquake waves. First is the body waves and second is the surface wave. Body waves are generated due to release of energy at the focus and move in all directions traveling through the body of earth. Hence the name is body waves. The body waves interact with the surface rock and generate new set of waves which are called the surface waves. The velocity of waves changes as they travel through different material with different densities. The denser the material, the higher is the velocity. Their direction also tends to change as they reflect and refract when coming across different materials with different densities. And that is why it has been said that study of seismic waves give an idea about Earth's interior. Now, having talked about the body waves and surface waves, let us look into the different types of body waves. There are basically two types of body waves: primary waves and secondary waves. Primary waves move faster and are first to arrive at the surface of Earth. That is why they are called primary waves. The primary waves are similar to sound waves. and they can travel through gaseous, liquid and solid materials, whereas secondary waves arrives at the surface with some time lag. An important fact about S wave is that they can travel only through solid medium. As you know, the primary waves can travel through all three mediums, while secondary waves can travel only through solid materials. These waves are helpful for scientists in determining the internal structure of the earth. Now, propagation of earthquake waves is also different. Now, P waves vibrate parallel to the direction of the wave. This exerts pressure on the material in the direction of the propagation. As a result, it creates density differences in the material, leading to stretching and squeezing of materials. While secondary and surface wave vibrate perpendicular to the direction of the motion of wave. Hence, they create troughs and crests in the material through which they pass. Surface waves are considered to be the most damaging waves. Now, till now, we can say that earthquakes are mainly occurring due to the disequilibrium created in the Earth's crust, and plate tectonic theory gives a valid explanation of or causative factors behind the occurrence of earthquake. Now, Gaurav sir has already covered the topic of earthquake in previous DNS. So we will quickly look into the types of earthquake, their hazardous effect and NDMA guidelines. So let us first look into the classification of earthquake. Now there can be three broad classification. One is on the basis of causative force, second is on the basis of focus, and third is on the basis of human causality. We have taken here the classification on the basis of causative force. First is natural. Now, as the name suggests, these are those earthquakes which are caused by natural process, that is due to endogenetic forces. And these can be caused by volcanic activity, tectonic activity, isostatic disbalances and plutonic earthquakes. Basically, plutonic earthquake is a deep focus earthquake which occur at greater depths, while isostatic earthquakes are triggered due to sudden disturbance in the isostatic balance at regional scale. Now, another classification on the basis of causative force is anthropogenic. Man-made activities are pretty much responsible for the occurrence of earthquake. Activities like drilling, mining, construction of reservoir, blasting of rocks by using dynamites for construction purposes, and nuclear explosion can cause earthquake. On the basis of focus, we can divide earthquake into three broad classification. First is moderate, second is intermediate, and third is deep focus. Now moderate earthquake where focus is located at depth of around 50 km, while intermediate where depth is around 50 to 250 km, and beyond 250 km is the deep focus earthquake. Similarly, classification on the basis of human causality is moderate, highly hazardous and most hazardous. It is generally done on the basis of number of life lost. When the death figure lies below 50,000 mark, it is termed as moderate. When death figure crosses 50,000 mark and lies below 1 lakh mark, it is called highly hazardous, while above 1 lakh mark is considered as most hazardous earthquake. Now apply the knowledge of the plate tectonics and you can find the relevance of the world distribution of earthquake. Most of the world earthquakes are associated with the zones of young fold mountains like in Himalaya, the zones of faulting and fracturing, the zones representing the junction of continental and oceanic margin, and the zones of active volcanoes along with different plate boundaries. Now major earthquakes both in terms of frequency and intensity occurs in three major zones. One is circum-Pacific belt surrounding Pacific Ocean, the mid-continental belt and the mid-Atlantic belt. Now hazardous effect of earthquake includes mudslides, landslides, differential ground settlement, ground lurching, avalanches, structural loss, loss of life, and tsunami. Now, the earthquake events are scaled either according to the magnitude or the intensity of the shock. The magnitude scale is known as the Richter scale. The magnitude relates to the energy released during the quake. The magnitude is expressed in absolute numbers, that is 0 to 10. The intensity scale is named after Mercalli, an Italian seismologist. The intensity scale takes into account the visible damage caused by the event. The range of intensity scale ranges from 1 to 12. Now, these are the dynamic systems which are happening miles and miles underground and occurring in slow geological time. So, predicting when an earthquake would happen on any fault is not currently possible. Today, we can just identify regions where we expect future earthquakes to fill a seismic deficit. So, the best course of action for the public is to prepare for earthquake to minimize the damage. As per the current seismic zone map of the country, over 59% of India's land area is under threat of moderate to severe seismic hazard. According to NDMA website, the increase in earthquake risk is due to a spurt in developmental activities driven by urbanization, economic development, and the globalization of India's economy. And NDMA has suggested some guidelines as to what to do after the occurrence of an earthquake, which are listed as follows. It has asked to keep calm and switch on the radio, TV, and obey any instruction you hear on it. It talks about keeping away from beaches and low banks of rivers. Huge waves may sweep in. Be prepared to expect aftershocks. Turn off the water, gas, and electricity. Do not smoke and do not light matches or use cigarette lighter. Do not turn on switches. There may be gas leaks or short circuit. Use torch. If there is a fire, try to put it out. If you cannot, call the fire brigade. If people are seriously injured, do not move them unless they are in danger. Immediately clean up any inflammable product that may have spilled, like alcohol or paint, etc. If you know that people have been buried, tell the rescue teams. Do not rush and do not worsen the situation of injured persons or your own situation. Avoid places where there are loose electric wires and do not touch any metal object in contact with them. Do not drink water from open containers without having examined it and filtered it through a sieve, a filter, or ordinary clean cloth. If your home is badly damaged, you will have to leave it. Collect water container and ordinary and special medicines for person with heart complaints, diabetes, etc. Do not re-enter badly damaged building and do not go near damaged structure. Our next discussion is based on this news which featured on page number 11 of The Hindu newspaper. And this news talks about issues raised by Kerala minister with reference to the federal structure. Now, the Kerala government is consulting lawyers on a constitutional question whether subordinate legislation or rules of a central act prevail upon an entry on the state list of constitution or an act passed by the assemblies. Kerala law minister said that the present controversies after Kerala Governor Arif Muhammad Khan's notice to 11 vice chancellors is not limited to Kerala. He thinks there is a larger intention by the center to control the public universities. Now, if you will refer to the General Studies Paper 2 syllabus, functions and responsibilities of union and state and issues and challenges pertaining to the federal structure has been mentioned there. And it has remained an important theme from the perspective of UPSC examination. Now, by definition, a unitary government is one in which all the powers are vested in the national government, and the regional governments, if at all exist, derive their authority from the national government. On the other hand, a federal government is one in which power are divided between the national government and regional governments by the constitution itself, and both operate in their respective jurisdictions independently. So, although India is a quasi federal country, there are issues in all aspects of federation which test the durability of Indian federation. The basics about Indian federalism has been already covered in previous DNS. So, we will focus on current emerging issues with India's federation. Now, following are the current issues facing Indian federalism. First is the increased centralizing tendency. As we have seen, the dispute related to the division of union, state, and concurrent list, as we have seen in the case of the farm laws. Similar strain in relationship was witnessed during the events related to the New Delhi and Jammu Kashmir. Now, second issue is rising regionalist demand. Now, growing regional identities are culminating into secessionist tendencies, as in case of Nagaland. Similarly, growing regional powers are affecting foreign policy. As we have seen, the Teesta issue in West Bengal has affected our relationship with Bangladesh, and same was the case with Tamil Nadu in relation to the Tamilian issue of Sri Lanka. Now, another issue is dispute related to All India services. As we have seen recent confrontation between West Bengal government and central government related to central deputation of West Bengal cadre IAS and IPS officers. Now, the main issue for which we have taken up this topic is related to the office of governor. Arbitrariness in misusing the office of the governor has been a subject of debate. Matters related to recommendations related to the imposition of precedent rule, that is Article 356, reservation of bill, that is Article 200, as we have witnessed in the NEET bill of Tamil Nadu, and the current issue, that is Chancellor of the University, as is the case with the Kerala government. Now, another issue is economic unviability. And this unviability of the states with regard to economic and financial capacities. As you know, low revenue and high expenditure of bordering states and less developed state are being compensated by the developed state. So there are discontent among developed state over the misappropriation of their revenue. Now, another point of contention is fiscal relation between the union and state government, and it has undergone significant changes as a result of creation of Niti Aayog and the introduction of goods and services tax. Now, there are some positive trends which are acting as a counterbalancing. First is the strengthening of horizontal federalism with advent of ideas like competitive and cooperative federalism. Financial devolution reform, that is increasing the financial space for states and making distribution of resources fairer and more effective. Now, another important trend was the vital role played by the state governments on the ground in managing the COVID-19 crisis, and union understandably ceding adequate space and autonomy. Now, increased federal character due to the creation of Niti Aayog and GST Council is another trend which is showcasing the counterbalancing. Now, having seen the challenges pertaining to federal structure and trends of counterbalancing, let us look into some reform which are needed to strengthen the federal structure. The first is rationalization of the 7th schedule. There is a need to relook the distribution of powers under the 7th schedule of the Constitution. Now, effective utilization of federal bridging institutions such as Niti Aayog and the Interstate Council for effective mutual trust between the state and center leadership is warranted. There is need to strengthening the office of governor by implementing the recommendations suggested by the commission, including the famous Sarkaria and Punchi Commission. There should be provisions for higher devolution to the state and local governments in order to fiscally empower them to achieve state-specific targets of fiscal deficit and to attain the goals of the national development. We should gradually move away from a one-size-fits-all model towards a flexible model of federalism that allows each state to have its own model of governance, bureaucracy, and local government. Our next discussion is based on this news which featured on page number 2 of the Hindu newspaper. The news is an interview of an Aam Aadmi Party leader who talks about need for waste to energy plants as a solution for landfills. The problem with Delhi right now is that more garbage is reaching the landfill sites than is being processed. Now this can be dealt in two ways. The first is to ensure the segregation of waste at the source so that it does not reach the landfill. And second is to start waste to energy plants so as to remove the burden away from the landfills. Now, if you will refer to GS paper 3 syllabus, the conservation, environment pollution and degradation along with environmental impact assessment has been mentioned. Developments and technologies related to environment and its sustainabilities have been a recurring theme in UPSC examination. So here in this discussion, we will discuss upon the condition in India related to municipal waste. We will also look into the pros and cons related to the waste to energy technology, and then we will look into the solution to these problems. Now, first question that we should ask is why waste to energy is required. Now, most waste that are generated find their way into land and water bodies without the proper treatment, causing severe water and air pollution. The problems caused by solid and liquid waste can be significantly mitigated through the adoption of environment-friendly waste-to-energy technologies that will allow treatment and processing of waste before their disposal. Now, urban India produces around 55 million tons of municipal solid waste every year. And of this, only 25% is processed, recycled, or converted into energy. Remaining all finds its way into dump sites or is burned openly. Now, municipal solid waste contains biomass or biogenic, that is, plant or animal products, materials such as paper, cardboard, etc., food wastes, leaves, woods, and leather products. Now, according to World Bank's report in 2018, India's per capita waste generation lies at around 0.57 kg per day. According to Central Pollution Control Board, that is CPCB, in 2022, there are only 12 operational waste to energy plants in India. Now let us have a look at the pros and cons of having waste to energy plants. Now, first benefit of waste to energy plant is that it is better than the traditional incineration process. It is often promoted as clean energy when compared to wasteful incineration practices of the previous decades. Secondly, landfills are the last resort when it comes to the waste management, causing numerous issues such as production of greenhouse gases, the consumption of large piece of land, the potential for pollutants to seep into the ground and groundwater, and many more. Waste to energy methods can greatly reduce the volume of waste that is landfilled. Another important benefit is the resource recovery. It gives an opportunity to recover valuable resources such as metals post incineration. They can be sent for recycling and kept in the economy. This is even true for mixed material which are notoriously hard to recycle. Incineration burns away materials such as plastics, leaving the metals behind, which can be considered better than landfills where recyclable materials are simply buried. Another benefit of waste to energy plant over landfilling is the opportunity to recover valuable resources such as metals, and they can be sent for recycling and kept in economy. If we use our waste correctly, we can create a huge amount of energy from it. For example, we can produce gas, energy generation, and create electricity and heat and other fuels. So it is a source of limitless energy. The process is sustainable too. We don't need to call on fossil fuel or non-renewable sources to make it happen. Most of the processes are natural, such as anaerobic digestion process. As a result, the organic waste is turned into a source of energy that would have once been lost when placed in landfill. Now, of course, there are costs associated with generating energy from waste. This will be dependent on the technology being used. However, the financial advantage comes from no longer needing to transport waste or placing it in landfills. Along with this, there is the financial aspect that derives from generating energy that can be sold on. Having a look at the positives, let us look at some cons related to waste to energy plants. Almost all carbon content in the waste that is burned for waste to energy plant is emitted as carbon dioxide, which is one of the most notable greenhouse gases. While waste to energy gives the opportunity to recover some resources such as metal, it tends to destroy far more. For example, in mass burn, whereby MSW is burned wholesale rather than being separated, the WTE process can destroy resources that could otherwise have been recovered, including minerals, wood, plastic, and etc. This is especially true if there is not a rigid separation process for the municipal solid waste ahead of the process of incineration. Now, if people, organization or government believe that waste to energy is a viable source of energy and a waste management technique, they all are less likely to engage with or invest in more impactful solutions such as reduction, reuse or recycling. So this will result into disincentivizing recycling process. Today, many developed countries send their waste to developing countries for processing, often as a part of broader waste management plan that claims to improve recycling rate. So WTE plants can fuel an unregulated waste trade. Now there are concerns related to technology challenges as suppliers are international organizations who struggle with the change in quality and nature of waste generated in Indian cities. A few plants in India have already stopped operation for this reason. The other big challenge for this plant is the power tariff. Generally, the tariff at which the power is purchased by such plants across the country is around 7 to 8 kilowatt per hour, which is higher than the 3 to 4 rupees per kilowatt hour generated through coal and other means. Now, having seen the pros and cons associated with the waste to energy plant, let us look into the way forward. First is the segregation. Now, other solutions need hard work, which includes convincing people to segregate waste at the source level itself. It requires taking the community together and decentralizing waste management. Urban local bodies should invest in charting out an action plan on waste management according to the Solid Waste Management Rules 2016 within a time-bound manner. Second point related to the rationalization. Now, there are flaws in the execution of existing policies. Only 10 to 15% of total waste is incinerable. Without understanding this, people are considering waste to energy plant as the ultimate solution to waste management. Based on total waste production, we do not need waste to energy plant in each and every city. We may need it regionally or state-wise. Now, pelletization of municipal solid waste involves the process of segregating, crushing, mixing high and low heat value organic waste material and solidifying it to produce fuel pellets or briquettes, also referred to as refuse derived fuel, that is RDF. Pelletization enriches the organic content of the waste through removal of inorganic materials and moisture. It can be very effective method for preparing an enriched fuel feed for other thermochemical processes like pyrolysis, gasification apart from incineration. Now, sustainable consumption and production and also about decoupling economic growth from environment degradation, increasing resource efficiency and promoting sustainable lifestyle is key to the solution of municipal solid waste. The next topic of today's discussion is based on this news which featured on page number 12 of the Hindu newspaper. This news is about the launch of India's first suicide prevention policy by the Union Health Ministry. Now, this is first of its kind in the country. With the time-bound action plans and multi-sectoral collaborations to achieve reduction in suicide mortality by 10% by 2030. Now, if you will refer to GS paper 2 syllabus, you will find government intervention in shape of welfare schemes for vulnerable section of population by the center and states and the performance of these schemes mechanism, laws, institution and bodies constituted for the protection and betterment of these vulnerable sections. Now, recent National Crime Record Bureau, that is NCRB report, stated that 1.64 lakh people died by suicide in 2021. This is 10% higher than the COVID deaths in India in 2020 and 6.8 times the maternal death in 2020. We must also understand that UN's Sustainable Development Goal, that is SDG 3.4, aims to reduce premature mortality from non-communicable diseases by 1/3 through prevention and treatment and promote mental health and well-being. Now let us have a look at the National Suicide Prevention Strategy. Now this strategy is in line with the WHO's Southeast Asia region strategy for suicide prevention. The strategy is to achieve reduction in suicide mortality by 10% by 2030. Strategy also aims to establish effective surveillance mechanism for suicide within the next 3 years. It aims to establish psychiatric outpatient departments that will provide suicide prevention services through the district mental health program in all districts in next 5 years. It aims to integrate a mental well-being curriculum in all educational institutions within the next 8 years. The strategy also aims in developing guidelines for responsible media reporting of these suicides. It aims at restricting access to means of suicide. And lastly, the strategy focuses on developing community resilience and societal support.